Dark and light is such an interesting contrast and such a dramatic thing. I love going to great theater and performances, and the simplicity of that is how most of that starts. It's just you're sitting there, and all of a sudden everything goes dark, and then the orchestra kind of starts, and then you're off to a great performance, the lights come up, and it's excellent. But it's dramatic, isn't it? You were probably sitting there and you were getting tense, weren't you? There was anticipation and all those kind of things. But I love that anticipation and that wonderful beginning of something that can be so incredible, the performance that you might be witnessing. They use that in a lot of performances. Actually, you've probably been to a few holiday performances this past year, last 3 or 4 weeks, that have maybe not had an excellent performance, but you're there because you're a good sport and a family member is in this wonderful performance and you sat through it and you're a trooper. I fear that that's kind of the way today is going to go for you. You just were in this darkness, the anticipation, something dramatic going to happen, and then Pastor Roy. Can you hear the trombone? Wah, 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 right? But today, that whole dramatic piece and something very new and exciting and interesting about a beginning. I love beginnings. Let's talk about that a little bit. If you are somebody who has appreciated or can see a new beginning in your life and something that happens, we're getting ready to face a new beginning, aren't we? Wednesday is going to be January 1, and we're off to a new year. But if you think about some things that are kind of new and some interesting things about beginnings and what you appreciate about them, it can be a wonderful experience, can't it? For me, I like to think of maybe something as simple as a new book. And you open that book and the smell of the new pages and all that wonderful aroma that hits you, and you're just like, I'm starting a new book, this is going to be great. Or if you're not into, actual physical books and you're wondering, what is this guy talking about? What are those things? And you buy all your books online, it might be you're excited to be swiping and, look at the book I'm reading here. So that was a joke about the swiping. It's not exciting. It's not that exciting. But there might be some new other things that are so exciting. I remember when our children came into the world and the excitement of a brand new baby. Oh my goodness, man, that just hits you, and it's something you just feel miraculous, and just all kinds of emotions all at one time for this new child that's coming to the world. Something even simpler, though, you might have received a new game this year, and you've just been playing on that video game for like all Christmas Day, and your family's trying to get your attention. But there's also other new experiences like a new home, a new job, all kinds of neat and wonderful things about new. And this year, as we're heading into 2020, I was thinking of this, the beginning and the beginning of the year, and so my thoughts brought about this idea of this message that God just kind of laid on my heart. And I want to let you know that if you this year head into work or wherever you, whatever you're doing, and you hear something really cheesy about 2020 and Vision 2020, it's all going to be out there. Email me, let me know about that stuff, because this is going to be the year for that stuff to happen. Vision 2020, and we're all already geared up for that wonderful new start and new beginning. I used to, love the new beginnings of even a semester and the anticipation of what new kind of material am I going to look at and learn from and do all those things. It could be a wonderful thing. I think in the same dramatic way, the Bible starts. In Genesis 1:1, I want you to think about this. In Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was an evening, and there was morning, the first day. Creation. First day, dramatic beginning. It's dark, it's formless, and then all of a sudden God says, let there be light. This morning I want to talk about in the beginning. What was it like in the beginning? There are some important things about in the beginning. The word that's used here is the word bereshith, which means that it was the absolute beginning of created things. And the word here talking about God is the word Elohim, which means that he was to be feared or to be revered. It also points to the fact that there was a divine trinity in the moments of creation. And so what we're seeing here and experiencing here is an all-powerful, all-sufficient, almighty, all-knowing, and ever-present God. It's the God of eternity that has just stepped out into time and space and spoke these words in the beginning. God created the heaven and the earth. So what's important about creation? I want to just take a few moments to go through the first two chapters, pick out a few of the truths of these first two chapters of Genesis and just point them out so that we can enjoy them today and then bring home a real point to what creation might be for us today as we're thinking of this new beginning. So, what is important about creation? Understanding and appreciating the beauty of what he created out of darkness and out of this void place. Isn't it incredible when you think of an almighty, all-eternal God and how he formed this whole world out of nothing? Incredible to me. If you think of some of the most beautiful places you've been, and it probably popped in your mind right away, you can think of that in God's creation. And maybe some of the places that you enjoy and become that place of rest for you is a place that is one of God's creation. This is our favorite place, one of our favorite places. And it's beautiful, isn't it? I remember once being in the nursing home talking to Mr. Floyd White. He founded this church years ago, and telling him we were going on a beach trip and all this stuff. And he said, I like the mountains. And this here is a picture of Cape Breton. This is the island my wife grew up on. And so when our girls were younger, we went there as often as we could because it's just stunning. You're driving along in the ocean on one side of you and scaling mountains on the other. Absolutely gorgeous. And we would go there with our girls, and I would get up. A typical vacation day for us when we went to Nova Scotia, I would get up in the mornings at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd jump on the boats with her family because they were all commercial fishermen, and we were going out there to pull up lobster traps or crab traps and just bring in beautiful snow crab or lobster, and I'd bring those home with me. The kids were having an easier morning with their grandparents. We stayed at their house and having tea and biscuits with Poppy and Nanny while they were waiting for Dad to get home, and I'd shower up, have a little lunch, and then I'm a 20-minute napper. I can nap for 20 minutes and I'm good to go. We'd head down to the shore, goof off on the beach for about 3 hours, and then come back, have a little dinner with Nanny and Poppy, and then you had to have the cup of tea and watch the 6 o'clock news. That was like an evening ritual with her grandparents, and we did that. And then at dusk, we'd scale up one of these mountains, the North Mountain, and at dusk, all the moose would come out of the woods and the bog, and you'd just see anywhere from 5 to 10 moose just all over the road, and we'd just drive up and just look at these incredible creatures. And that was vacation for us. That was beauty. This place is so beautiful, Cape Breton Island, that Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, this is his summer home there. I mean, he doesn't live there anymore, but I mean, this is the home he built. So he was a rich guy. He was an inventor, right? And we all experience his invention still today, right? You can't even get away from your cell phone anymore. And my cell phone's always on. I'm always seem to be on it. It's a wonderful invention, but also a very big frustration because my wife will get after me because she'll say, "Put your phone away. You're on it too much," all this kind of stuff, right? And it gets even worse when there's company because she's like giving me the eye, you know the evil eye, right? Like you put that phone away kind of eye. And then whenever the company's not around and it's just the two of us, she'll pummel me a little bit. She'll be like, "You put that phone away, you stop talking, you're being so rude," and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. These people are rude, are boring. I don't even know what to say. But that's not how I really feel. It's how I think. It's a totally different thing. But we see the beauty of God's creation, if we can say. And then God's creation is of intelligent work and order. So it's an intelligent design. This is the God of the universe that put all things in order and all things in place. So we read about the first day. The first day was about light and darkness. The second day, he created the atmosphere, and he separated the heaven and from the atmosphere and the earth from each other. And on the third day, he created dry land and the vegetation that would come. On the fourth day then, he brought in the moon and the stars and all those celestial planets and things out there. And then on the fifth day, he created the sea creatures and the birds. On the sixth day, he created all land animals and created man. And then on the seventh day, he rested. So there's order and there's perfection to the way he did things. I often think, well, if I was involved in this, there'd be a lot of do-overs, right? I'd get distracted and I'd create the animals because that would be more exciting. And then they would all drown because there was no dry land for them and they couldn't eat. And, it'd just be a mess. But God, in his design and his intelligence, put all these things together. Then God's plan from the beginning, this is another really key point about the pieces of creation, is his plan from the beginning is God with us. Now, we just went through a series here for Christmas, and we talked about this very thing. And we used some of the prophecies to talk about what God is doing and how he brought Jesus into the world. And the very word Emmanuel that we looked at in Isaiah means God with us. And so God with us was not just the theme that we look at Christmas, but it was a theme I can tell you right away from the beginning, from creation. He just wanted to have that relationship. He wanted to be with us. And here's what Watson and Hill had to say about this. This is out of their Old Testament survey commentary. It says, "What is the plan that spans the scope of creation, history, and prophecy? We find it communicated through the pages of the Bible. God's plan from the beginning was to create a people among whom he would dwell and with whom he would be in relationship." That is what creation is all about, God with us. So what does this reveal, this whole creation thing, about this relationship? There's some key points here that I want us to look at. Number one, man was created in the image of God. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says, "So God created man in the image of God. In the image of God created he male and female." Now, this is a great and awesome thing because this idea of being created in the image of God means that he loved us so much that he wanted to instill within us those things that connect us to God. And those things that will always make us the people that will be wanting to show dignity and respect and love for that fellow mankind. And so and then that piece of his image within us, that we are to be image bearers of Christ. And then we are to be those people that, as image bearers are our Creator, that we are looking to Him. So there's that hole, there's that void that must be filled, that can only be filled with God. The next thing is He created male and female of every species to inhabit the earth. Now you may think this is simple, like whatever, male and female, He created them. But it's an important point. And it's important a point in our culture today because this is a conversation, isn't it? This is something that becomes big discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity and sexual behavior. All these kind of things become a real tense argument for us. And what I am telling you today is that I believe the truths of creation are the great simplifier of those. Now, I'm using the word simplifier because it's not easy. Anybody who has these discussions with somebody they love, it is not easy. But I can tell you, God created us and formed us in a relationship with Himself and formed male and female. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, let's move along here. This is a tough one, right? Pastor Roy's up there and he's stepping in it this morning. That's true. But I will tell you this, that you came here this morning, you don't want to be dragged in this because you were thinking, I'm coming here on a Sunday, it's between Christmas and New Year's, I'm just putting in a little Jesus time, and then I'm going back home to my Christmas leftovers and my Nintendo Switch, and I don't want to deal with this. But it's an important thing, thing that I believe the truths of creation talk about. So let's move along to something easier. In the beginning, He created and established the home. Wow, that's an easy one, right? Let's just take care of that one here. But in Genesis, let me show you these verses here. Genesis chapter 2. It talks about establishing the home. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She will be called woman, and she shall be taken from man. And this will be, and this is why a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." And the home is that important piece of creation and society that God's put together. It's the strength of that home and the parent units that are able to speak of the creation and show the image of God to their children so they will be that for each other. It's the place where conflicts and things can get resolved and forgiveness can be shown, and you can demonstrate all the wonderful pieces that God wants us to be. So the home's very important. I think it's very important, all these interesting things that come out of the creation story and what God set up right from the beginning. So how do we apply creation truths today? Here we go. In Romans chapter 1, Paul talks to this people, and Paul is talking to a Roman society who has basically given up on God, and they've just taken in so many thoughts and things that it really didn't matter. You can believe in Jesus, you can believe in the mythical gods of the Greeks or whatever, but he takes the time. If there was any book in the Bible that would be Paul's dissertation, I believe Romans would be that book of the Bible, and he takes the time to explain how he came to be a disciple of Christ and how he wanted to be that and be there for the people, for the Romans. And then he said, let me explain how we came to this spot where we need a Savior. And then he starts to deal in the book about sin and about original sin and the wonderful things that God did for us, and that even while we were sinners, Christ died for us. And at the end, he's showing how the pieces of sanctification and how we are working through all these things and becoming more and more like Christ. But he starts by, just sharing how the world gets to that place. And you know where it starts? He said that the Romans and society, culture, when they chose the creation over the Creator, when they eliminated the creator from the creation, society and cultures began to tear down. And what he says there is that God gave them over to a reprobate mind, is what the King James refers to it as. But it was believing lies instead of believing the truth, and believing darkness instead of light. And they were coming to these places where they were having big arguments and nothing making sense, because they made the creation or the created things greater than the creator. And they were worshiping idols rather than worshiping God. What are some things that maybe take us away from God? Is it man as the highest element and the highest being, or is it God that's the highest? So he gave them over to the foolishness and gave them over to these kind of thoughts that just kept disintegrating and making for a dismal culture. In the end of that chapter, he expresses and explains what that's all about. So don't separate creation from the Creator. The next thing I want you to see in creation, as we're wrapping this up, is I want you to see Christ in creation. Now, this is a great piece of creation that you can't miss. In John chapter 1, it says this: "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was light, and the light, or life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shined through the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it." And then he goes on to say that as many as received him, though the world had rejected him, and he came to his world, he came to his own, and they did not receive him, but as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. So this is important, because the God of creation, that's Jesus Christ in creation, and he now has given the light so that you and I could have a place with him. He came into this world not of his own will, or not of flesh and blood, but not of the will of man, but of the will of God, so that we can have the Father within us, the light within us. For we beheld his glory, full of grace and truth, as it says in John chapter 1. That's the important thing about creation. When we come back to Genesis chapter 1, let's go all the way back there and see that in the beginning, God says, "Let there be light." And let the light overcome the darkness. What is it for you today? Is there a darkness that I need to make a decision? I'm going into 2020. And I need some real life change. And all these ideas of the earth without form and void and darkness, is that maybe what's happening for you today? Are you facing those pieces? It could be a dismal and a dark place, but it can be a place where God is setting the stage, because he wants to say into your life and speak into your life, "Let there be light." And the light of Christ comes in. And salvation can be yours if you just call upon his name, as Paul said in Romans. So today, where are you at? What are the dark places that you wish God would just bring some light into, so you can experience something different, and you can go into 2020 maybe with some great and wonderful, powerful things that he will do in your life, because Jesus is our light.